What if one simple action today could shift everything: your peace, your finances, your relationships, your future? Most people wait for miracles, but spiritual wisdom teaches something different. Miracles are invited. There is a small, powerful step you can take today that signals faith, opens doors, and aligns your life with unexpected blessings. The question is not if miracles exist, the question is, will you do what activates them? There is a moment that quietly changes a person's life, the moment they stop waiting and start moving with belief. Many people think miracles arrive randomly, like lightning in a clear sky. But spiritual truth suggests something deeper. Movement invites momentum. When you choose one intentional action today, you send a message to your life that you are ready for change. Intentional action is not about doing something huge. It is about doing something meaningful with awareness. It might be reaching out to someone you avoided, starting the task you kept postponing, speaking a prayer with sincerity, or choosing hope where fear usually lives. Small actions carry invisible weight when they are done with belief. The world often responds not to size, but to alignment. What stops most people is the idea that they must feel ready first. They wait for confidence, clarity, certainty. But readiness is rarely a feeling, it is a decision. The step creates the strength. The action creates the clarity. When you move forward while still uncertain, you activate something powerful inside you. You prove to yourself that fear does not lead your life. Every intentional action breaks the pattern of delay. Delay whispers that tomorrow is safer. But tomorrow quietly becomes years. The miracle begins the moment you interrupt that pattern. One decision today can redirect an entire future. Not because the action itself is magical, but because the identity behind it changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits and start seeing yourself as someone who responds. There is also something deeply spiritual about showing effort before results appear. It demonstrates trust. It says, "I believe something is possible even if I cannot see it yet." This kind of movement attracts opportunities because it changes perception. You notice doors that were always there. You recognize support that once felt invisible. Action sharpens awareness, and awareness reveals possibility. But intentional action requires letting go of perfection. Many people never begin because they want the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect version of themselves. Yet life rarely moves through perfection. It moves through participation. Imperfect steps create real momentum, while perfect plans often stay imaginary. The miracle is not that everything works immediately. The miracle is that you finally begin, alongside action. There is another force that prepares the ground for change: gratitude before evidence. This idea feels unnatural because the human mind is trained to celebrate outcomes, not anticipation. But gratitude is not a reaction. It is a posture. When you express thankfulness before receiving, you shift from doubt to trust. Gratitude before the miracle changes how you experience the present moment. Instead of constantly scanning for what is missing, you begin noticing what is working. This does not deny challenges. It prevents challenges from becoming your only focus. Gratitude widens perspective, and a widened perspective makes hope sustainable. There is a quiet confidence in thanking life ahead of time. It signals expectation without pressure. It says, "I don't know how this will unfold, but I trust that something is unfolding." That trust reduces anxiety because you stop believing that everything depends solely on your control. You still act, but you no longer carry the weight of forcing outcomes. Gratitude also transforms ordinary moments into evidence of support. A helpful conversation, a small opportunity, an unexpected idea, these begin to feel like pieces of something larger rather than random events. The mind starts connecting possibility instead of reinforcing limitation. What you appreciate grows in visibility. Another powerful shift happens internally. Gratitude softens resistance. When people live in constant frustration, they unintentionally close themselves off. Opportunities can appear, but they are filtered through skepticism. Gratitude keeps the heart open enough to recognize timing. It creates emotional space where new experiences can enter. This does not mean pretending everything is perfect. Authentic gratitude acknowledges difficulty while refusing to surrender hope. It allows you to say, "This is hard, but there is still something here to appreciate." That balance builds resilience. It keeps you moving without becoming hardened. When intentional action and gratitude combine, something remarkable happens. Action signals readiness. Gratitude signals trust. Together they create alignment, the sense that your effort and your belief are moving in the same direction. Many people act while doubting, or believe without acting. Alignment happens when both exist at once, and alignment changes energy. You become less desperate and more focused, less fearful and more present. You stop chasing miracles as distant events and start living in a way that makes them possible. Sometimes the miracle is the opportunity that appears. Sometimes it is the strength you discover. Sometimes it is the peace that replaces constant worry. What matters is this: today holds more influence than it seems. One intentional step, one moment of genuine gratitude. These are small choices that carry long echoes. Life often shifts quietly before it shifts visibly. The seed breaks underground long before anyone sees growth. So do not underestimate simple movement or quiet thankfulness. They are not minor gestures. They are signals, powerful ones, that you are ready for something different. And readiness is often the doorway through which miracles enter. The belief that everything depends on their control. They plan every detail, anticipate every outcome, and try to protect themselves from uncertainty. At first, this feels responsible. It feels like strength. But over time, control can quietly become exhaustion. The tighter you hold life, the less space life has to surprise you. Real transformation often begins the moment you loosen that grip. Releasing control does not mean giving up effort. It means understanding the difference between your role and life's role. Your role is action, intention, preparation. Life's role is timing, connection, and outcomes that are bigger than your perspective. When you confuse the two, pressure replaces peace. Many people delay progress because they want guarantees. They want to know the result before they begin. But certainty is rarely available at the start of meaningful change. Growth requires movement into the unknown. Letting go of control is choosing trust over constant prediction. It is saying, "I will do what I can, and I will allow the rest to unfold." This shift changes your emotional experience immediately. Anxiety often comes from trying to manage things that cannot be managed. Other people's reactions, future events, perfect timing. When you release that responsibility, your energy returns to what you can influence. Focus becomes sharper because it is no longer scattered across imaginary scenarios. There is also freedom in accepting that unexpected outcomes are not always negative. Sometimes what feels like delay is protection. Sometimes redirection reveals paths you would never have considered. When you insist on one specific outcome, you may miss better possibilities standing nearby. Control narrows vision. Trust expands it. Letting go requires courage because uncertainty exposes vulnerability. You cannot hide behind planning forever. But vulnerability is not weakness. It is openness to new solutions. It allows creativity, support, and timing to play their role. Many breakthroughs arrive not when everything is controlled, but when resistance softens. This does not mean passivity. It means participation without attachment. You show up fully, you give your best effort, but you do not measure your worth by immediate results. That separation protects your confidence. Failure becomes feedback instead of identity. Setbacks become adjustment instead of proof that nothing works. As you release control externally, another shift must happen internally, the way you speak. Words are often underestimated because they feel ordinary. But language shapes expectation, and expectation shapes perception. The sentences you repeat become the lens through which you interpret events. Many people unknowingly speak limitation into their daily lives. They say things like, "Nothing works for me," "I'm always behind," or "It's too late." These phrases feel like observations, but they act like instructions. The mind begins searching for evidence to confirm them. Over time, possibility becomes harder to notice because attention is trained toward doubt. Changing words is not about pretending reality is different. It is about choosing language that leaves space for movement. Instead of declaring permanent failure, you describe temporary difficulty. Instead of predicting disappointment, you allow uncertainty. This subtle shift keeps doors psychologically open. Words influence emotion as well. When you repeatedly use hopeless language, your body responds with tension and fatigue. When your language carries possibility, your nervous system experiences more calm and motivation. Nothing external has changed yet, but your internal state becomes more supportive of action. There is power in speaking what you are becoming rather than only what you have been. This does not mean unrealistic statements disconnected from effort. It means aligning your language with direction. Saying, "I'm learning," "I'm improving," or "something can change" reinforces progress. Identity begins adjusting before results fully appear. Your environment amplifies this effect. Conversations, media, and the voices you listen to contribute to your inner dialogue. If you are surrounded by constant negativity, hopeful language can feel unnatural at first, but consistency requires familiarity. Over time, possibility stops feeling like optimism and starts feeling like realism. Another important aspect of speech is how you talk during difficulty. Anyone can speak positively when life is easy. Transformation happens when challenges appear, and you refuse to use language that closes the future. You acknowledge the struggle without declaring defeat. This preserves momentum even in uncertainty. When releasing control and changing language work together, resilience strengthens. You stop trying to force every outcome, and you stop narrating your life as if limitation is permanent. The combination creates psychological flexibility, the ability to move, adjust, and continue without losing belief. Flexibility is essential because meaningful change is rarely linear. There are pauses, surprises, and moments that test patience. Control would interpret these as failure. Limiting language would reinforce that interpretation. But trust and possibility allow a different story. Progress is still happening, even when it is not visible yet. Over time, this mindset changes how you experience waiting. Waiting is no longer empty space filled with worry. It becomes active space filled with preparation, learning, and openness. You are still moving, just not forcing. You are still believing, just not demanding. And that is where unexpected shifts often occur. Not when everything is perfectly controlled or when every word is flawless, but when effort, trust, and possibility coexist. Life responds differently to someone who participates without fear of uncertainty and who speaks in ways that keep the future alive. Sometimes the miracle is not immediate success. Sometimes it is the quiet realization that you are no longer trapped by the need to control or the habit of negative narration. That internal freedom changes decisions, relationships, and direction. From the outside, it may look small. From the inside, it changes everything. There is a kind of power that does not announce itself, does not seek recognition, and does not demand applause. It happens quietly, often unnoticed by the world, yet it carries the ability to shift lives, including your own. This power is simple acts of kindness done without expectation. When you help someone without needing credit, you participate in a deeper exchange that goes beyond transaction. You step into generosity as identity, not performance. Most people associate giving with visible impact. They think kindness must be large to matter. But the smallest gesture, when done sincerely, can interrupt someone's despair, restore someone's hope, or soften a moment that felt heavy. A message, patience in conversation, forgiveness, support when no one is watching. These moments ripple further than you will ever measure. Hidden generosity changes you first. It loosens the grip of constant self-focus. Many struggles feel heavier because life becomes a closed circle around personal worries. When you extend care outward, that circle widens. Your problems do not disappear, but they stop being the only thing your mind sees. Perspective returns, and perspective creates emotional breathing room. There is also something profoundly strengthening about giving without validation. Recognition can feel rewarding, but dependence on recognition weakens consistency. When kindness becomes private, it becomes sustainable. You no longer wait for the right audience or the perfect moment. You act because it reflects who you are becoming. Quiet generosity builds trust in life's reciprocity. Not in a transactional sense, where you expect the same thing back from the same person, but in a broader understanding that what you create emotionally tends to circulate. Support invites support. Compassion attracts compassion. You begin noticing how energy moves through relationships and opportunities. Another transformation happens internally. Your sense of scarcity softens. Scarcity says there is not enough time, patience, love, or resources to share. But each act of giving challenges that narrative. You prove to yourself that you can contribute even while growing, that you can be supportive even while healing. This reduces fear because you stop seeing life as something you must constantly defend. Kindness also strengthens self-respect. Many people search for confidence through achievement alone, but confidence deepens when your actions align with your values. Knowing you show up with generosity, even quietly, creates stability that external success cannot fully provide. You trust yourself more because your behavior reflects intention. At the same time, the world you live in constantly influences your inner state. Your mind absorbs conversations, content, and emotional atmospheres more than you realize. If you are not intentional, negativity becomes normal simply through exposure. Protecting your inner environment is not avoidance, it is responsibility. Your inner environment is the space where thoughts form, meaning is created, and decisions begin. When that space is crowded with fear, comparison, and constant noise, clarity becomes difficult. You may still function, but you operate in reaction rather than direction. Guarding this space allows your choices to come from awareness instead of pressure. This does not mean disconnecting from reality. It means choosing what deserves repeated attention. Not every opinion needs entry into your mind. Not every piece of information deserves emotional investment. Discernment preserves energy. It allows you to remain informed without becoming overwhelmed. The people you spend time with shape this environment as well. Conversations that revolve around hopelessness, criticism, and limitation gradually influence self-perception. You may not notice immediately, but repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity feels like truth. Seeking relationships that support growth does not require perfection, only intention. Your habits play an equally important role. What you watch, what you read, what you listen to during quiet moments, these become the background soundtrack of your thinking. If that soundtrack constantly reinforces urgency and inadequacy, your nervous system rarely rests. Protecting your mind includes introducing voices that remind you of possibility, patience, and perspective. There is also value in silence. Modern life fills every gap with stimulation, leaving little space for reflection. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first because it reveals thoughts you usually outrun. But within that quiet, awareness strengthens. You begin recognizing patterns: what drains you, what restores you, what deserves continuation, and what requires change. Protecting your inner environment makes kindness sustainable. When you are emotionally depleted, generosity feels heavy. When your mind is supported, giving feels natural. The two practices reinforce each other. A healthy inner world makes outward compassion easier, and outward compassion strengthens the inner world. Over time, these choices reshape identity. You stop living as someone constantly reacting to circumstances and start living as someone intentionally creating atmosphere, both within and around you. Your presence becomes calmer, your responses more thoughtful, your decisions less rushed by external noise. And this shift influences outcomes in subtle ways. Opportunities are easier to recognize when your mind is not crowded with negativity. Relationships deepen when generosity is consistent. Challenges feel navigable because your internal space contains more stability than chaos. Nothing dramatic may appear overnight, yet everything begins moving differently. Sometimes the miracle is not a sudden event, but a gradual transformation in how you experience life. The quiet kindness no one sees. The boundaries that protect your peace. The awareness that allows you to choose your focus instead of inheriting it. These are small decisions with long echoes. There is a common misunderstanding about change. Many people believe transformation happens through dramatic moments, a surge of motivation, a powerful decision, a single breakthrough that changes everything overnight. These moments feel inspiring, but they rarely sustain progress on their own. Real change is quieter. It is built through consistency, the small choices repeated long after the emotion fades. Consistency does not look impressive in the beginning. It feels ordinary, sometimes even insignificant. One disciplined action. One intentional thought. One effort that no one else notices. But repetition carries a force that intensity cannot replace. Intensity creates sparks. Consistency builds fire. The reason consistency matters is simple: identity forms through patterns. What you do occasionally influences mood. What you do repeatedly influences who you become. Each small action sends a message to your mind about what is normal for you. Over time, effort stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like routine. Many people abandon progress because they expect visible results too quickly. When change is not immediate, they assume it is not working. But growth often happens below the surface, before it appears externally. Skills develop quietly. Confidence strengthens gradually. Habits reshape thinking long before outcomes confirm it. Consistency requires patience with invisible progress. There is also freedom in focusing on small steps. Large goals can feel overwhelming because they highlight distance. Small actions highlight movement. When the focus shifts from, "How far do I have to go?" to, "What can I do today?" resistance decreases. Momentum becomes accessible because the next step feels possible. Consistency builds trust, not from others first, but within yourself. Each time you follow through, even in a minor way, you reinforce reliability. You prove that your intentions are not temporary emotions. This internal trust reduces self-doubt because evidence accumulates. You remember that you continue even when motivation fluctuates. Another important aspect is compassion within consistency. Discipline is not punishment. It is commitment with understanding. There will be days when energy is lower, when progress slows, when mistakes happen. Consistency does not require perfection, it requires return. The ability to begin again quickly is more powerful than never struggling at all. Over time, small repeated actions create disproportionate impact. What once felt like effort becomes baseline. What once felt impossible becomes familiar. People often describe this as sudden change, but it is rarely sudden. It is the visible result of invisible persistence. The miracle is not the final outcome. It is the decision to continue long enough for outcomes to change. As consistency shapes your direction, another mindset becomes essential. Openness to outcomes that look different than expected. Many people imagine progress in one specific form. They believe success must arrive through a particular opportunity, timeline, or scenario. When life presents something different, they dismiss it because it does not match the picture. Expectation is natural. It gives direction and motivation, but rigid expectation can limit awareness. Sometimes the opportunity you need arrives disguised as delay, redirection, or something smaller than imagined. If you only recognize progress when it matches your original vision, you may overlook meaningful movement. Openness does not mean abandoning standards. It means allowing multiple paths to lead toward growth. When one door closes, the instinct may be to interpret it as rejection. But closure often contains information, feedback about timing, alignment, or preparation. Interpreting every change as failure prevents learning from what is actually unfolding. There is wisdom in holding vision firmly while holding method lightly. You remain clear about what matters to you, but flexible about how it appears. This flexibility reduces frustration because you are not constantly measuring reality against a single expectation. Instead, You look for direction within each experience. Unexpected outcomes often expand capacity. They introduce skills, relationships, or insights you would not have pursued intentionally. At first, these experiences may feel like detours. Later, they reveal themselves as preparation. Many turning points only make sense in hindsight because their value was not obvious at the moment. Openness also protects hope. When you believe progress must look one way, disappointment becomes frequent. When you allow progress to appear in different forms, encouragement becomes easier to notice. A conversation, an idea, a small improvement. These stop feeling insignificant and start feeling like evidence that movement exists. This mindset changes how you experience uncertainty. Uncertainty is no longer empty space filled with fear, it becomes space filled with possibility. You remain engaged rather than withdrawn. You continue acting rather than waiting for perfect clarity. Over time, this creates resilience because your motivation is not dependent on predictable outcomes. Consistency and openness together create powerful stability. Consistency ensures you keep moving.